welcome fisticuffs among kinsmen at House of Representatives hearing on Petroleum Industry Bill. Nigeria drops 3 points in latest corruption perception index. Presidency says Transparency International's facts are inaccurate. The president seeks collective international response to fight against COVID-19, terrorism and poverty. And Germany's vaccine committee restricts use of AstraZeneca COVID jab to people below 65 years. Plus we'll have business, sports, and later international news from our London studios. On business news tonight, Central Bank plans to inject 50 billion naira into the Nigerian commodity exchange as part of measures to stabilize food prices in the country.
On sports news tonight, Australian Open players get the green light to leave COVID-19 quarantine after spending 2 weeks strictly confined to a biosecurity hub.
And from Abuja, first batch of deported illegal migrants from Saudi Arabia arrives in Nigeria. 200 more expected tomorrow. It was a show of shame at the public hearing of the Petroleum Industry Bill by the House of Representatives as 2 men from host communities of oil-producing companies threw caution to the wind and exchanged blows over who should speak first for their communities. The situation disrupted the session, and when order was restored, proceedings resumed at the public hearing. Our correspondent Terry Kumi reports.
It's the final day of the 2-day hearing of the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee on the Petroleum Industry Bill. The day is dedicated majorly to receiving submissions from host communities and players in the oil and gas sector. But first, the government side concludes its presentations, which started on day 1.
As much as we want to protect today's revenue, we should look at sustainability. We should look at how revenue streams will continue to flow over the years. And these are the areas from the Ministry of Finance that we are looking at, because we don't want to get all the money today and then lose tomorrow's money.
Next, the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria speaks on protecting its interests.
Petroleum Deportation is marketers' money, no corporate. It's our money. So we are happy with great. So they are managing our money, and we are saying that they should not be displaced or put in jeopardy.
It's the turn of host communities, and a group known as Host Communities of Nigeria producing oil and gas is called upon by the committee to speak on behalf of all host communities. But then a fight breaks out as members of other host communities insist that they cannot be represented by the group. The Minister of Petroleum for State is among those who attempt to break up the fight. Attempts by security forces to remove the brawlers are resisted. Calm is eventually restored, and the host communities of the different oil-producing areas are allowed to make presentations.
The kind of things we used to do, the relation we have with our ecology is all disrupted. We are left behind. A lot of the time, we now have to resort to means that are not constructive. If you regard us as a fringe, with our back to the wall, and you want to come to our land to drill hydrocarbon, and you want to tie our hands, we hear you. I want to get the delegates of the leadership of the House and the Ministry to look critically into the recommendations as it affects the host communities. We must be given a paramount place in this. Thank you.
Oil company that is working in my place, please help us get them to employ my sons and daughters so that I can have peace. I adopt my position. I plead with you people to help our kingdom so that the peace in the Niger Delta can be sustained. Involve our people and there will be peace in the Niger Delta.
The host communities are hopeful that their demand of 10% instead of the 2.5% proposed for them in the PIB will be considered. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
The anti-corruption war of the country was punctured today following the poor ranking of Nigeria by Transparency International. The country's ranking in Corruption Perception Index dropped to 149 out of the 183 sampled countries, placing Nigeria 3 steps down from its 2019 score. The data was collected from 8 sources, including the World Bank and the World Economic Forum. Our correspondent Kayla McGraw reports that alleged lack of transparency in the COVID-19 response, nepotism in public service appointments, and prevalence of corruption in the police force are just a few of the reasons for Nigeria's CPI poor ranking for 2020.
Corruption for this year, Nigeria ranks 149 out of 183 countries. 3 places.
Absence of transparency in the COVID-19 pandemic response, nepotism in public service appointments and promotions, lack of adequate anti-corruption legal frameworks and interference by politicians in the operation of law enforcement agencies, prevalence of bribery and extortion in the Nigerian police, and security sector corruption. These are the 5 areas responsible for Nigeria's 149th out of 183rd rating of Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index for 2020. Its worst rating in 7 years, despite the Buhari administration's anti-corruption drive.
We find it disturbing that in some cases, supplies donated by a group of well-meaning Nigerian business persons, corporate entities, development partners and others under the coalition against COVID-19, COVID, were left inexplicably undistributed and in some cases rotten by the federal and state government. While these occurrences are not specific to Nigeria, citizens are yet to see concrete action by the anti-graft agencies on these issues.
There is also the fear that whistleblowers are not properly protected from victimization, mostly because the country's whistleblower policy is yet to have a legislative backing.
There are so many people who have been stigmatized, there are so many people who have been laid off work, there are so many people who have suffered one form of backlash or the other for speaking out against instances of corruption. But when we have a legislation in place, it will provide for some form of protection for whistleblowers.
Of the 175 countries surveyed, dipping to 148th in 2017 and improving to 144th in 2018. In the second term of the Buhari administration, the number dipped again to 146th, reaching its worst figure in 2020 at 149th.
On the prevalence of corruption within each country.
Transparency International is calling for the passage of relevant anti-corruption laws, full implementation of the 2020 Police Act, a transparent monitoring framework for security votes, and effective curbing of bribery among officers of revenue-generating agencies to improve Nigeria's corruption index by the end of 2021. Kayla Magwa, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the presidency believes the Buhari administration deserves credit for what it describes as the diminishing corruption in the public service, describing the report as inaccurate and not a portrayal of the facts on ground. A statement from the president's spokesperson, Mr. Garba Shehu, says the president will continue to support prevention, enforcement, public education and enlightenment activities of anti-corruption agencies. The statement reads in part, "We are currently analyzing the sources of data used in arriving at the latest Transparency International report on Corruption Perceptions Index in Nigeria, since by their own admission, they don't gather their own data." He explains further that in the coming days, the government's technical unit on governance research will be providing more detailed information on the sources of the TI data. Coinciding with this poor ranking of Nigeria is this account of a continuing effort into the recovery of funds allegedly stolen by the Abacha government and stuffed in a Swiss bank. A Swiss lawyer, Enrico Monfrini, says he's been working to recover the stolen funds in the past 20 years since he was first contacted by the government of former President Olusegun Obasanjo Mr. Monfrini explained to the BBC some of his findings on how the former military dictator diverted the funds to Swiss banks using several allies and what he describes as dollars by truckloads. In 2008, Mr. Monfrini said $508 million found in the Abacha family's many Swiss bank accounts was sent from Switzerland to Nigeria between 2005 and 2007. According to him, by 2018, the amount Switzerland had returned to Nigeria had reached more than $1 billion. He alleged that General Abacha diverted over $4 to $5 billion at the initial stage. Mr. Monfrini says he's still expecting $30 million, which he says is sitting in the UK to be returned, along with $144 million in France and a further $18 million in Jersey. To the security situation in the country, where insecurity remains a thorn in the flesh of the nation, as no fewer than 27 passengers traveling along Wukari to Takum Expressway have been kidnapped by gunmen suspected to be bandits in Taraba State. The chairman of Takum Local Government Council, Shiban Tikari, says the travelers were returning from a wedding in Wukari local government when the bandits attacked them and whisked them away to an unknown destination. He adds that with the help of youths of Takum communities and some security agencies, they combed the surrounding bushes but found nothing. Bonny Kingdom, situated in the southern edge of River State in the Niger Delta region, has been a hub of economic activity since the 15th century. But now it hosts 3 major international oil companies and is fast becoming a cosmopolitan town, with a major access route being through water by speedboats. However, the Bonny Waterway, which also leads to other communities and fishing camps, is currently unsafe as a result of the activities of pirates. Our next report takes a look at the people's experience in view of the insecurity on the waterways.
Usually, this scene at the boat park on the Bonu, Bile and Nembe waterside depicts the end of a workday for boat operators, and then the gathering to share tales of the waterways. But nowadays, the story being told is not of successful voyages, but of what is greatly reduced to trips made across these waters. Only the brave dare to embark on trips. The others stay away from fear of attack by a force waxing stronger with each passing day.
They attacked me and my passengers. They made away with 2 passengers, and they collected the sum of 4 million naira before they released those passengers.
Piracy has plagued the communities linked by waters in this part for a while, and the people say it's high time the authorities come to their aid and save their businesses from collapse.
We have been talking about this thing for so long. People will be traveling with speedboats. They are losing their properties. They are losing their life. Even our drivers, we have lost so many souls. Now look at that engine now. We are buying only engine 10 million naira. The boat is about 800,000. Somebody will come in the gunpoint. We'll take it and sell it 50,000 naira.
Passengers also have stories of encounters with pirates. Alali here has a bandit arm as evidence.
Okay.
The armed robbers attack us. As they attack us, then take their boat, jam and hit our own boat. Beam. Come on, cover your eye, cover your eye. All of us pull our head for that. Say, throw your phone.
She, along with the others, were lucky to have been released. But not so for these 5 men who have been missing since September 2020 when the company was ambushed. Their case is now popularly referred to as the Banigo 5. Wife to one of the victims just barely makes the day. Her husband's disappearance has made catering for their 11 children a lot more burdensome. Then there is a ransom demand, which to her is a very tall order.
We need 50,000 to 50 million. We have to get the 50 million. See then till now. My husband is not out today.
Prominent members of the community blame the attraction of the island and the falsehood of the law of quick money as reasons for the criminal behavior.
We also believe that if we want to make money, come to Bonny. But if we come to Bonny, we have to work. But in the kingdom, we have all sorts of people who come in, and then of late, they will start having this piracy at sea.
At times, their goods are seized. they seize the engine from the drivers, the women are molested, and they have to be on their own.
Combating pirates will be so much easier with adequate funding, but the chairman of Bonny Local Government Council says it's not sustainable.
The fuel they have been giving us so far cannot serve these 2 gunboats. If we have no fuel, this gunboat, as I'm talking to you now, we just have one gunboat at the river, and it can walk.
Boat operators and passengers understand the risk associated with journeying on the waters, but when faced with little options of survival, they move with hope of safe crossing.
In part 2 of the break, 3 killed in fatal accident along Afrique Road in Ebonyi State. Plus, President Muhammadu Buhari sees collective international response to fight against COVID-19, terrorism and poverty. That's all in a moment. Just stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Fisticuffs among Kingsmen at House of Representatives hearing on Petroleum Industry Bill. Nigeria drops 3 points in latest Corruption Perception Index. Presidency says Transparency International's facts are inaccurate. The President sees collective international response to fight against COVID-19, terrorism and poverty. And Germany's vaccine committee restricts use of AstraZeneca's COVID jab to people below 65 years. In Kaduna State, the military says troops have killed several bandits during various operations in their hideouts in 4 local government areas of the state. The latest onslaught against the bandits is coming just 1 day after the army deployed 300 female soldiers to the Abuja-Kaduna highway. The State Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs, Samuel Arwan, explains that the air platforms of the Nigerian Air Force carried out several armed missions across identified locations spanning Bruningwari, Giwa, Igabi, and Chikun local government areas. A few hours later, armed bandits reportedly killed another 4 in a separate attack on communities in Igabi and Kajuru local government area of the state. Police authorities in Imo State have been reacting to a viral video of some police officers beating residents of Olo in Imo State in the aftermath of a dusk-to-dawn curfew imposed by the state government. The State Commissioner of Police, Nasir Mohammed, condemned the inhuman treatment and assault and ordered the arrest and trial of the officers involved in the infraction. The police chief further asked residents to report all unprofessional conduct of police officers in the state to the concerned authorities. At least 3 persons have been reported dead following an accident involving a bus on the Afikpo Road in Ebonyi State. An eyewitness told Channels Television that he heard a loud sound in front of his house, and on stepping out he saw people who were making frantic efforts to rescue those trapped in the vehicle. The 18-seater bus was said to be conveying passengers from Port Harcourt, the River State capital, to Abakaliki, the Ebonyi State capital. The police spokesperson in Ebonyi State Command, Loveth Oga, said that the accident occurred after one of the front tires burst when the vehicle was at top speed. Let's cross over to Abuja now. Here's Linda Akibe. Linda?
Hello, Ijoma. Welcome to Abuja. As the world continues to battle the COVID-19 pandemic, the President is asking the international community to collectively confront the health crisis and other common challenges affecting the globe. President Buhari lists the challenges to include terrorism, climate change, population explosion, human trafficking, corruption, poverty, and proliferation of small arms and light weapons. The President said this while receiving the letters of credence of the ambassadors of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Argentina at the presidential villa. State House correspondent Gloria Omezuki reports.
Sequentially, the ambassadors present their letters of credence to President Muhammadu Buhari at the State House. The envoys are the ambassadors of Saudi Arabia, Egypt and Argentina. Clearly, amidst the global challenges, the President wants a stronger collaboration with the international community to resolve shared issues.
Security is a protracted problem, but we are not relenting in our efforts. Not only are we equipping the military, we are also boosting their morale to perform their constitutional duties without undue interference. We are also encouraging localities to enhance their intelligence gathering and timely remitting to the security agencies. The federal government will continue to promote religious freedom as it is a constitutional responsibility.
The President also met with a delegation of the Nigeria Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, led by its President General, the Sultan of Sokoto, His Eminence Alhaji Muhammad Sa'ad Abubakar. Here, the President reiterated a call for collaboration with his administration to address the security challenges in the country.
The second wave of the coronavirus pandemic has come with different strains that pose additional challenges to the initial outbreak. These challenges underscore the need for the international community to work even more in concert to collectively identify appropriate ways and means to globally resolve these challenges.
President Muhammadu Buhari is also hoping that the traditional leaders will be advocates of the proposal to administer vaccines to Nigerians, as well as the recently launched alternate school program. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umesuke, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the Minister of Health has been giving details on when Nigerians should expect the rollout of the coronavirus vaccine. Dr. Sage Haniri told Channels Television that the vaccines are expected in Nigeria in February, but there is no exact date of delivery. The Health Minister was a guest earlier tonight on our program, Politics Today.
We do not have an exact date. The date it comes out depends on when the manufacturers are able to deliver. And that is not something that any country can enforce at this time. You hear that the European Union were threatening to sue AstraZeneca because the vaccines that were supposed to be delivered were not delivered at the right time, and their timeline for conducting their vaccination looked like it was disrupted by that. Now, the producers of vaccines are working at full time. There are countries that place firm orders, and every country is scrambling. There's a vaccine scramble going on, if I will use that word. And not all countries are getting the vaccines at what they want. I think it was yesterday when the U.S. president announced that they are ordering another 200 million to make their order 600 million. Now that has to be taken again out of the vaccine production, and if you have the vaccine production plant inside your country, then of course you have an advantage against those who have to wait for you to deliver. So the timelines are not in the hands of the recipients in this case, unfortunately.
To legal matters, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, today rearranged the former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mohammed Adoke, as a High Court in Abuja on an amended 42-count charge. Mr. Adoke, who is facing trial over the alleged role he played in the transfer of ownership of an oil block OPL 245, regarded as one of the biggest in Africa, took fresh plea alongside two others, Aliyu Abubakar, Raski Binige, and 4 companies, Malabu Oil and Gas Limited, Nigeria Ajip Exploration Limited, Shell Nigeria Ultra Deep Limited, and Shell Nigeria Exploration Production Company Limited. The defendants, who were initially arraigned on January the 23rd, 2020, pleaded not guilty to the amended charges. The court has adjourned trial till April the 14th. When the news attorney returns, Central Bank plans to inject 50 billion naira into the Nigerian commodity exchange as part of measures to stabilize food prices. That's in business news. Join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10. The first batch of Nigerian irregular migrants deported from Saudi Arabia are back in the country. They arrived at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, earlier today. About 400 of the deportees who were flown into Nigeria on board a Saudi aircraft will be quarantined for 14 days in line with COVID-19 protocols. Our correspondent Empress Simon reports.
These are some of the irregular migrants from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia who have just arrived at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, after they were deported from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for not having legal documents. This viral video posted online by one of the Nigerians stuck in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was what caught the attention of the Nigerian government to their plights. In keeping to its promise to evacuate 802 of the returnees, 384 have now arrived, conveyed by Saudi Arabian Air. One after the other, they made their way into the arch terminal at the airport, where they were first subjected to temperature check before being ushered in. Some are, however, in bad health condition and have to be supported. This returnee narrates his ordeal in the Middle East country, where, according to him, they were subjected to inhuman treatment.
I want to welcome our returnees from Saudi Arabia.
At hand to receive the returnees are officials from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Federal Task Force on COVID-19, and other agencies of government who take turns to address them. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is particularly worried about youths desperate to go abroad.
We do not support irregular migration. It is risky, and there is no point for it. And so if there are people who probably are engaged in this, please desist from it.
The second batch of returnees are expected on Friday, 29th January 2021. The returnees, according to authorities, will be quarantined for 10 days, after which, if they do not test positive, they will be integrated into the society. From the arch camp at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, Empress Simon, Channels Television News.
And back here in Lagos, the state government has imposed restrictions on truck drivers within the Oshodi-Apapa Expressway area and other parts of the state to ease the traffic. The Lagos State Commissioner for Transportation, Friedrich Oladende, says the truck drivers will ply routes in the state only between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. daily. He adds that a string of crimes have been perpetrated in and around Apapa-Oshodi Expressway, including rape, theft and kidnapping, owing to the gridlock experienced in the area. The Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde and his River State counterpart Nyesom Wike have vowed to ensure that unity is restored in the People's Democratic Party. At a meeting of the party leaders at the Government House in Ibadan, Governor Wike said the meeting would have to hold again as some members were absent. For his host, Governor Makinde, the Southwest remains pivotal to the future of the party.
We will continue to pursue peace in PDP Southwest, because we believe that Southwest is pivotal to where Nigeria is going to move to.
Peace needs a lot of talking to people. And you know, in politics, you need to talk to people for people to understand. It's not something you will think that, oh, because you met today, or because you're meeting tomorrow, everything must be resolved that particular day. You know, politics is of interest. And so you need to make sure everybody is fully involved. So let's not be in a hurry to say, when do you think? But what is important is that the Southwest PDP is our belief, is our hope, that the way they have been, that's how they will continue to be.
To some company news, Nigeria's largest airline, Air Peace, is again blazing the trail as it receives its first Embraer 195-E2 aircraft, becoming the first airline operator in Africa to acquire the medium-range jet. The chairman and chief executive officer of Air Peace, Mr. Alan Onyema, says the company made orders for 30 brand new aircraft, which will be delivered in a matter of weeks.
Management of Air Peace, their associates, and government officials are awaiting the arrival of the company's latest acquisition. The chairman of Air Peace kickstarts the event as he speaks on the essence of acquiring brand new planes.
Having a brand new airplane is to enhance your savings. It's not as if the old second-hand planes and the old planes are not good. They're good. So we decided to make an order for 30 aircraft.
Applauding the efforts of Air Peace, the Brazilian ambassador to Nigeria highlights the importance of the new aircraft, just as the chairman of the Senate Committee on Aviation pledges the support of the National Assembly to indigenous businesses.
Air Peace should be very, very proud of its continued success, becoming the domestic and West Africa market leader in only 6 years from launch, with great contribution to Nigeria.
For us at the National Assembly, we are committed to us doing all the necessary support, that are required to make the airline operators strive.
For the governor of Edo State and the Minister of Aviation, affordable flights is key to sustainability.
We should join the aviation authorities in rethinking air transport to bring the cost of air transport closer to be afforded by masses of Nigerians.
The quest for you to want to fly is driven by so many factors, amongst which is pricing.
With the speeches over, the arrival of the aircraft is welcomed with the traditional water salute. This is immediately followed by a tour of the aircraft and cutting of cake. Strong E-Jet's heritage and designed by people with passion for innovation and attention to details, the E2 is the world's best performing fleet smart solution as Air Peace lives up to its motto of blazing the trail with its first brand new aircraft in Africa.
From aviation business to more business, is Taniola Shobowali.
Welcome to Business News. The Central Bank Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, has announced plans to commit the sum of 50 billion naira for the repositioning of the Nigeria Commodity Exchange. The plan, according to the CBN boss, is expected to give a boost to the commodities exchange, which has been performing suboptimally for some years now. At a meeting with members of the steering committee, which aims to reposition the commodity exchange, Mr. Emefiele lists the economic benefits to be tapped from the platform.
This time we invite the governor.
The CBN has been engaging with the management of the Nigerian Commodity Exchange and other key stakeholders on strategies to revamp the exchange and upgrade its facilities, similar to what exists in other African and Western countries where commodities exchanges are a key driver of economic growth. It's against this backdrop that Mr. President considered and approved a proposal for the repositioning of the Nigerian Commodity Exchange in order to consolidate on the government's efforts aimed at strengthening the agricultural value chain, part of which includes connecting farmers to markets beyond their immediate environments.
Now, the African Export-Import Bank has disbursed $250 million credit facility to TransNiger Oil and Gas Limited, a related company of African investment conglomerate Hess Holdings Limited, to enable it to acquire 45% stake in oil mining lease 17 onshore oil field. A statement from the Pan-African Multilateral Trade Finance Institution says the amount is part of a $1.1 billion 5-year total support package signed in December last year, which is required by the oil firm for a majority stake in the oil field. Afrexim Bank mentions that the reserve-based lending facility is the largest amount to be disbursed by the lender for the acquisition process. The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, says its downstream subsidiary, the Petroleum Products Marketing Company, recorded a total of $158.04 billion from the sales of white product in October 2020. In a statement released today, the state oil firm says the amount represents an increase of 92% when compared to 80.15 billion naira recorded in September last year. The NNPC further mentions that total sales of white products for the period of October 2019 to October 2020 stood at 16.46 billion litres, while premium motor spirit, also known as petrol, accounted for 16.34 billion litres, or 99.28%. To some company news now, Flour Mills of Nigeria PLC has listed 29.89 billion naira Series 4 Tranche A and B fixed rate bonds under its 70 billion naira bond issuance program at the FMDQ Securities Exchange Limited. According to a statement by the company, the bond consists of a 4.89 billion naira Series 4 Tranche A and 25 billion naira Series 4 Tranche B fixed rate bonds. It adds that the proceeds of both bonds have been used entirely to refinance its existing commercial paper notes, which were also successfully issued during the pandemic. Key indicators of the Nigerian stock market have entered new highs for the year after sustaining the gains from bargain hunting for a fourth consecutive session. Imi John Mekwa tells us more.
The total value of listed equities has hit the 22 trillion naira mark for the first time, and the bull bellows again. Or did you hear that? It signifies the bull's continued dominance as the NSE's all-share index re-enters the 42,000 level after gaining 0.57%. Although more corporate earning results were released today, that did not have much impact on the market. Instead, the gains from Zenith Bank, Lafarge, and the Nigerian breweries did the match. Now, let's look at the sectoral performance. The impact of these equities was largely felt across their indexes, which all ended in the green, and was also supported by some of their peers. Now, on the other hand, sell pressure on Mobil and Adova's share price pulled their sector into the red. Moving over to the activity charts now, the total volume of transaction is higher by about 7% compared to midweek session, signifying that the market is actually attracting more investors. The three most attractive equities are the shares of Transcore, Union, and Zenith Bank. And, well, another green day. One more day to go for the week and the month, and hopefully it will remain in the green. Back to you.
And that's business news tonight. It's back to you, Ijoma.
Thanks, Teniola. Germany is set to limit AstraZeneca's jab to people aged under 65 as the country's vaccine committee cites insufficient data over its efficacy on older people. And this comes as the EU is in a dispute with leading manufacturers over a shortage of vaccines on the continent. Let's go over to our London studios now, where Simon Pusey has more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. A controversial near-total ban on abortion in Poland has taken effect, a law which prompted huge protests when it was issued in October. Abortion is now only allowed in cases of rape or incest or when the pregnancy threatens the life of the mother. The majority of Poles oppose a stricter ban, and demonstrations took place in Polish cities on Wednesday evening. Activists have called for large street protests in the capital Warsaw. The October ruling by the Constitutional Court found that a 1993 law allowing abortion in cases of severe and irreversible fetal abnormalities was unconstitutional. Poland's Conservative government, which has strong ties to the country's powerful Catholic Church, supports the ruling. The court justified its ruling on the grounds that an unborn child is a human being and therefore it deserves protection under Poland's constitution, which ensures the right to life. US security chiefs have warned of a heightened threat of domestic terrorism from people unhappy with the outcome of the November presidential election. The Department of Homeland Security said the 6th of January attack on the US Capitol by Trump supporters may have emboldened some extremists. In an advisory, it warned of a threat from individuals frustrated with the exercise of government authority. The attack on the US Capitol building came as Congress was meeting to confirm Joe Biden's election victory. 5 people, including a Capitol police officer, died in the riot. Pfizer and BioNTech say their vaccine has been shown to be effective against coronavirus variants that emerged in the UK and South Africa. The companies said the virus mutations had only a small impact on the effectiveness of antibodies generated by the vaccine. Pfizer said it would continue to monitor its real-world effectiveness against new strains. Earlier this week, Moderna said its vaccine was also effective against the British variant, but gave less protection against the South African one. Vietnam has confirmed its first outbreak of COVID-19 in nearly 2 months, warning it could be more serious than its last wave of infections as authorities rushed to test tens of thousands of people. The Health Ministry initially reported 2 locally transmitted cases, the country's first in 55 days, before announcing that a further 81 infections were detected. The total 83 cases were a new record daily high for Vietnam, which has effectively closed its borders and avoided the larger epidemics seen by its neighbours. Before the current outbreak, Vietnam had recorded just over 1,550 cases and 35 deaths. Lebanon's security forces have clashed for the 3rd night with protesters in the city of Tripoli, with local media reporting that riot police fired live bullets at people trying to storm the city's government. Security forces fired tear gas and bullets at protesters who threw stones, hurled Molotov cocktails and lit a car on fire. Dozens were wounded. It marks the 3rd night of violence in a row in one of Lebanon's poorer cities where people want lockdown restrictions lifted. The government imposed a 24-hour curfew earlier this month. Somali lawmakers have called for an investigation after boys were tricked into going to Eritrea for forced military training instead of being given jobs in Qatar. Parents from 5 families said that their sons were recruited in 2019 to work as guards for Qatar's 2022 World Cup preparations. The allegations will increase scrutiny on Eritrea. The country has never held elections, has no independent media, and forces citizens into indefinite government service. A regional security analyst said that about 1,000 Somalis had been recruited, many under the impression they were going to Qatar, but instead were taken to Eritrea. Some 750 pelicans have been found dead in a UNESCO World Heritage Site in northern Senegal that provides refuge for millions of migratory birds. Footage filmed by a tourist in January 2020 showed birds flocking to the site. The bird sanctuary near the border with Mauritania and a resting place for birds that cross the Sahara Desert into West Africa each year. Rangers found the dead pelicans at the sanctuary, which is a transit place for about 350 species of birds. Experts say it may be a highly infectious strain of bird flu. And finally, conservationists in England are recruiting the country's first ever rangers to look after European bison, Europe's largest land mammal, which is being introduced into Kent. More than 15,000 years after its ancestors roamed the landscape, Kent Wildlife Trust and the Wildwood Trust are bringing a small herd of the animals to Blean Woods to help naturally manage the habitat. The ideal applicant would need to understand animal behaviour. The bison, which will come from the Netherlands, Romania or Poland, will be kept in a near wild state, creating space for other species to thrive. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Time now for the sports news. Australian Open players have started exiting COVID-19 quarantine after spending 2 weeks strictly confined to a biosecurity hub. The first group among the 960 players, coaches and officials isolating at 3 Melbourne hotels were allowed to leave from 6 p.m. local time, with the rest expected to depart by Sunday. The players will be free to move around the cities and surrounding regions so long as they abide by local social distancing restrictions. Reigning English Premier League champions Liverpool FC are back to winning ways following a 3-1 win against Jose Mourinho's Tottenham Hotspurs at the Tottenham Stadium. The win is Liverpool's third successive league double over Spurs for the first time ever. Roberto Firmino handed the visitors the lead, 4 minutes of added time in the first half. Trent Alexander made it 2 just within 2 minutes of the first half. As Spurs' Pierre-Emile Højbjerg reduced the deficit in the 49th minute, and Sadio Mane again extended their lead for his 10th goal of the season. And Chelsea's new manager Thomas Tuchel has paid a glowing tribute to his successor Frank Lampard and says he understands why the club's fans will be hurting at the sacking of the club icon. The former PSG manager, however, reveals that Lampard has already been in touch and he hopes fans do not hold his predecessor's sacking against him. Cristiano Ronaldo is being investigated by police in the city of Ulster over a ski trip which could have broken Italy's COVID-19 regulations. Italian news agency ANSA reports that local police are looking into his trip to Cumbria earlier this week with his girlfriend to celebrate her 27th birthday. And that's a wrap in sports news. I'm Ayo Tunde. Back to you.
Thanks a lot, Ayotunde. And the main news again. Some representatives of oil-producing communities today engaged in a free-for-all at the House of Representatives public hearing on Petroleum Industry Bill. The fight broke out over who to speak first as the leader of the host communities. Also today, Nigeria's fight against corruption suffered yet another setback as the country dropped 3 points in the latest corruption perception ranking by Transparency International, the lowest rating since 2013, even though the government disputes that ranking. And Germany's vaccine committee today restricted the use of AstraZeneca's COVID jab to people below 65 years. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Unyato. Good night.